I just want to do a brief review of skull anatomy. Here on your AP views, here we have the AP view of the internal carotid artery, and here we have the AP view of the vertebral artery. And for the AP views of these intracranial structures, you're going to want the petrous ridge superimposed over the supraorbital rim. So we'll start with the orbital rim. I'll just kind of try and draw it here. You don't see it really well, but so about there is your orbital rim. So the top is the supraorbital rim, the bottom being the infraorbital rim. And then meanwhile, you have this chunk of bone. You can kind of see this line coming, and what that is the temporal bone. The temporal bone has a chunk of bone that projects medially into the brain, and that is called the petrous portion of the temporal bone. That petrous portion is the densest bone in the skull, so it shows up bright white. And like I said, it's a whole chunk of bone, but you want the superior ridge of that chunk, so you want the petrous ridge to be superimposed over the supraorbital rim. So here again, we've got the petrous ridge coming in from the lateral, from the temporal bone, and you want it superimposed over the supraorbital rim, which in both of these pictures it is. Then for the lateral, just going to go over some basic anatomy. Now these are lateral views. This is lateral of the left picture is lateral of the internal carotid artery. The right picture is a lateral view of the vertebral artery. And first thing I notice is this gray, gray hole right here. That is your EAM, your external acoustic meatus, or your ear hole. And if you'll notice, that ear hole or the EAM is surrounded by this bright white chunk of bone. And again, that is the petrous portion of the temporal bone. It's bright white because it's the densest bone in the skull. And so the EAM is part of the temporal bone. Also on the temporal bone, and let me see if I can erase this. Nope. Okay. Also on the temporal bone, you have this here, which is the mastoid process. Here's just the base of the skull, or the occipital bone. You don't see it really well on this picture, so let's look on the one on the left. No, the one on the right actually is better. Okay, the one on the right, again, here, this saddle shape, that is the sella turcica, in which the pituitary gland sits in that saddle-shaped structure. Just below the sella turcica is the sphenoid sinus. Also on this picture we can see the mandibular condyle, which articulates with the temporal bone. So this right here is your TMJ joint, your temporomandibular joint. Let's see, on the picture on the left, the carotid siphon is superimposed right over that sphenoid sinus. So here's the sphenoid sinus, I'm circling, and then right above the sphenoid sinus then is the sella turcica, in which the pituitary gland is in. On this picture on the left, I don't see the EAM just real clearly, but let's just say it's right here. It's going to be in the center of this big white chunk, which is the petrous portion of the temporal bone. And again, here you've got the occipital bone, here you have frontal bone, here you have parietal bones. Let's see. Those are your main structures. So again, I don't think you have to, have intricate knowledge of the skull anatomy, but you just need to know, your big landmarks. And so for your AP, it's going to be to make sure that this petrous ridge is superimposed over the supraorbital rim. And then for your lateral, just making sure that everything is not rotated. Everything's like here. Okay, here are the orbital rims here superimposed. So you got your orbital rims superimposed, your TMJ joints superimposed. Just making sure it's not rotated. That's the main thing.